recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of June 8th, 2020 be adopted as amended to include item 6A, a notice of motion. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Excuse me. Item 3A, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of May 25th, 2020 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Renhalla, second by Councillor Adey. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of May 25th, 2020 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Skelton Morvan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And item 3C, recommendation of the minutes of the regular council meeting of May 25th, 2020 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Skelton Morvan. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, first we have a report from our Director of Operations regarding the 2020 Capital Paving Program Award. Mr. Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. The recommendation of the Operations Department is that Mayor and Council approve our recommendations and award the 2020 Capital Paving Program to CNC Road Maintenance. The city annually completes paving under the Capital Paving Program. The paving is undertaken under this program and covers the trouble spots throughout the community. We put out an RFQ for the 2020 paving program and received 2 compliant bids. One was from Adventure Paving at $1,007,831.38, and the other was from CNC Road Maintenance of Kitimat, and their dollar value was $804,251.50. While Adventure Paving is a local company, there is a 25.3% difference, which equates to $203,579.88 in cost savings. We further went and did reference checks, and they resulted in positive feedback. This is well within the approved capital budget for 2020. So the Operations Department is recommending we move forward and award the 2020 Capital Paving Program to CNC Road Maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Niche.
Well, it would be really nice to support local business, but unfortunately at a 25% difference, you know, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the reality at $200,000 worth of difference, that's if we had to put that in figures of raising the taxes 2% just to make up the difference of that, I don't think people would be liking that if we went to the taxpayers and said, we have to raise your taxes 2% in order to make up that difference. Obviously, we wouldn't do that, but that is essentially what it equates to. And I unfortunately, this happened last year or a couple years ago when we paved downtown, and we had an out-of-town company come in, and they were able to do the same work for a lot less, and you know, they proved to be a good contractor, and we can only hope that this happens in this situation too, is that we end up with some good work done, and maybe in the future Adventure Paving can you know, do other works with us.
Other comments? Councillor Adey.
I do think we need to recognize that if you pay a local company, then a good portion of that money is coming back into the community, so it's not money draining out of the community. So I think that needs to be taken into account. I also think, along the lines of Councillor Niche, that on a very basic level, it's pretty simple. You know, the cost savings are significant and need to be taken seriously. And I am wondering whether, if it's an out-of-town company, would we anticipate that some of their workforce would be staying in town during the time of the projects? Because that would be a way of bringing some of that money back as well. I don't know the answer to that. I'm asking if anybody knows.
Mr. Pucci.
So the company is out of Kitimat. I suspect that they would be that they wouldn't be taking shelter here in hotel rooms. I would suspect that they would be doing long hours. They've told us that they want to get all of the paving done in a quite short span, so they'll be working long hours to get all the paving done at once. So I don't know the answer to that, but it's not that far for them to go back and forth. So I would suspect they'd be going back and forth.
Councillor Cunningham.
You know, it's a tough one. All the employees of Adventure Paving are local residents who spend their money in town. We've been pushing shop local, and you know, is this an ironclad contract where there's not going to be any extras that come out of the woodwork with us? Richard?
Yeah, so both companies bid on the same RFQ process. They were given a list of areas to quote on. So we went out, we surveyed the areas, we marked them, we have a list, and they both bid on the same amount of paving. So I do not believe there would be extras unless we decided to put extras into it.
Okay, and when's the work going to be done?
I don't have the schedule here with me. They're in the process of submitting it, but they want to get it done quite soon, is my understanding. I can get that for council, and like I said, that what they're doing is they want to book it so that it's all done at one time. So they'll come in and do all the paving at once.
And their employees, are they all Kitimat residents? Or are they bringing people in from other areas? That might be a question you can't answer, but during the pandemic, we were pushing that no outside visitors come to town, and now we're contracting out a company that is an out-of-town company coming to town when the pandemic might still, the restrictions that we were thinking of putting in place would still be in place if our act of emergency had gone through.
Yeah, I'm not sure if all of their employees are from Kitimat or not. We don't have that information, Councillor.
Okay, it's just a few things that bother me about this, but you know, like, I got to agree with Councillor Neeson that $200,000 is a lot of money, and the city can't afford to throw it up in the air and have it disappear. But at the same time, I really like to see us shop locally in that, and you know, there's some considerations here that I think that are outside of the perimeter of a normal contract. You know, that plant alone that Adventure put in is worth over $3 million, and I'm quite sure that increased their taxes in the industrial park when they did that. So there's a few things here that I think that in the future we should take into consideration, because we don't always have to get the lowest bid, and that's part of the paperwork when you see it. But at the same time, I think local companies should sharpen their pencils the first time around. Thank you.
Mr. Pucci, now the savings then, does that mean we're going to have an additional $200,000 that can go into paving as well?
If the budget was $1 million, then yes, we will be under budget with our paving.
Okay. And I'll just say, you know, I think it is a tough one, because you have a company that we definitely want to support, obviously, because they're a Rupert-based company. But I also think we have to find the balance between accountability to the taxpayers and supporting local business. I think the taxpayers of this community, you know, if we consciously chose to go $200,000 to a local business, I mean, we have been for the last 6 years basically trying to get the taxes under control and get the revenue in, and now we have an ability to save taxpayers money. You know, at $200,000 of costs, you know, as much as I personally want to support a local company, I can't in good conscience go and overspend when you know that you can save that $200,000 and get additional value for what the taxpayers are paying for, which is to get the roadworks complete. So for me, I definitely will support the recommendation, because it's a 25.3% savings to the taxpayers. And we will also get an additional $200,000 worth of paving done, and we know this community has been wanting that to be done. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, the bids didn't come in where we need them, but this isn't the first time that we've had to choose an outside company whose money, where the value is is greater there when in terms of the cost savings. So, you know, we always support local business as best we can, but in this circumstance, the savings is great, and I think we need to make sure we're doing what's right for the taxpayers ultimately. Other comments?
I have a question on the line, if that's all right.
Sure, we'll do, yeah, go ahead.
It's just a procedural question. It might just be a difference in language, but capital paving program versus operations. I'm just wondering if the CFO can clarify in reallocating what we had budgeted, that $200,000 difference. Does that mean that we can expand the paving program, or does that mean that it's going to like emergency road reconstruction and potholes?
Because we've budgeted for capital, the savings can be allocated towards future roadworks later this year. Things like patchworking, emergency repairs is a good example, Councillor. If we have to dig up any broken pipes, there's always paving that needs to be done on top of that. So some of the money can go towards that as well. But yes, I would say that the amount is still budgeted for this year that can be allocated towards future paving as necessary.
Councillor Renauer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, you already said what I'm supposed to be say. Like we all support local business, but savings are huge. So my only question is like Richard, if we got like any warranty work to do, so they will come back here.
Yes, yes, Councillor, we would make them come back to complete warranty work. We would have hold back on the paving contract, and then we would enforce that. We would do the holdback, look for deficiencies, and then try and make them reclaim or use the holdback.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in favor of the recommendation.
Okay, so the recommendation that Mayor and Council award the 2020 capital paving program to CNC Road Maintenance. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Skelton-Moorman. Any further discussion?
Can I just make one comment on the local purchasing, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty obvious that there's an appetite on council to support local as much as possible, and I think obviously the question that comes from this particular example is at what cost? And obviously a 25% premium is not palatable, but all I wanted to comment is basically to say we need to be clear on what we mean when we say supporting local, and so it's more than just payroll. Both of these organizations have ownership groups that are not local, so there's also an equally important element of local purchasing and how much do these companies from out of town actually buy and source materials and supplies and equipment from local businesses. But so I would just end by saying I am looking forward to the day that we have the capacity at the city to implement a social procurement policy, because I think there is that appetite across council to look at how we can use our procurement strategy to maximize more than just the bottom line, but also have some social and environmental benefits as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I think it might be worthwhile if council were to call some of the major contractors in town into a meeting about procurement and where we'd like to go with them, and have them work with the city. Like this is just an example, and obviously there's a reason why there's a difference in pricing. I know for sure that Venture Paving's all union. I don't know about this other company. And on top of it, I like to see residents of Prince Rupert working in Prince Rupert, not having to go out of town and pave in other areas simply because some other outfit that I don't know the first thing about other than what I've been told by different people. And, I just find this very difficult to support a project where the money is all going out of town. Okay, any further discussion?
Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, motion's carried.
I'd like it noted that we opposed it.
That's noted every time someone opposes. Okay, next we have a report from the Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. This is in regards to the April variance. Now that the budget has been passed, we have something that we can track against. Overall, operating and utility revenues and expenses are on track for this time of year and are within budget, aside from variances which have occurred relating to COVID. Airport ferry revenue is down given the absence of commercial air travel. Transit fees were waived for 2 months, and given the recreation center is closed due to the provincial health orders, there have been implications to those revenues as well. Both the airport, ferry, and recreation departments have experienced reductions to expenses as well, with no overtime or casual wages incurred. The recreation department has been conducting much of their annual maintenance in the downtime, meaning when it is open, there will be no planned need to close for that purpose. Fiscal revenues are significantly higher than budgeted, given the city received an unexpected Northern Capital and Planning grant, as well as the funds for the plant, part of the funds for the planned water treatment plant. Both amounts have been transferred to their associated capital reserve fund. Capital projects are now proceeding, and costs will be rolling in as the construction season progresses. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have a report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the alternative approval process.
Thank you. The city has 2 loan authorization bylaws that have received 3 readings and approval from the Inspector of Municipalities. The next step in the process for obtaining loan funding for each of the Woodworth Dam replacement and the solid waste landfill cell creation is to receive elector assent through the alternative approval process. Attached to this report are the notice of alternative approval process for each project, which will be advertised in the Northern View, the elector response forms for each project's alternative approval process, and the determination of the number of eligible electors in Prince Rupert. Council is asked to pass the resolution that approves all of these items, as well as setting the date for receipt of the elector response form as it pertains to each bylaw for July 24th at 4:30 p.m. Electors are asked to sign the elector response form should they disagree with council borrowing funds for either project. Information on each project is located on the city's website under City Hall, City Financials. That will be available tomorrow. Each loan is not anticipated to increase either of the water or solid waste fees.
Thank you. So the resolution is that council by resolution provide notices of 2 simultaneous AAPs, the electoral response forms for each loan authorization bylaw, set the deadline to receive the electoral response forms, and establish the total number of electors in Prince Rupert. And that would be for both of them. So that'd be a motion. So moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Randhawa. Okay, discussion.
I
I
just
have a
think
question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we'll do Councillor Niche, then Councillor Morrow.
I just the one thing that I really want people to understand in this is that obviously it's 2 big loans, but the good thing about this is that these loans are basically the payments on these loans will be not affecting taxpayers, and I think that that's a big key part to this all is that the taxpayers, the money will not be coming directly from the taxpayers. It'll be coming from money that we are earning through Watson Island and not having to raise fees in order to do our solid waste or to do the dam, and I think that that is an important piece, because if we were going to the public and asking for 2 $10 million loans and telling them that their taxes were going to be increased by 10% or something, well then I think there would be an appetite for people to be against it. But I'm hoping that people can see that this is going to be paid for with money that's generated through money that we're making on Watson Island, and how that's proving to be very fruitful for us now, a couple years down the road. And yeah, I just think that this is something that needs to get done regardless of how we do it, and hopefully we will have the public support and not the people against it.
Councillor Moreau and Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Nation, and particularly I just want to add, it's hard to imagine that we would have had the fiscal capacity to actually do this a few years ago. And that's a real testament to staff's hard work on turning around on Watson Island because, yeah, Councillor Niche said, in a world today where we can say that we can take on this level of debt and service it without needing to raise utility fees or taxes, it's a fundamentally different picture than if this was 5, 7, or 10 years ago. So I'm very thankful that staff have made our jobs easy on that front, or easier, I should say. I do have one procedural question, though, and it's regarding if there's any direction from the province who have made some concessions with the new reality of COVID-19 around procedures for virtual meetings and things of that nature, like public hearings. So this question kind of pertains both to the AAP, but also, I guess, to the OCP. And the next agenda item, I'm wondering if we've heard anything from the province, if they're planning to make additional provisions or changes to the community charter around enhancing electronic availability for things of this nature, given that a lot of these COVID restrictions are not going away anytime soon.
I can speak to it, and I have not heard anything yet with respect to the OCP or for certain with the alternative approval process. For those that are listening, it is in the notice that will be in the paper, but you can email asking for an elector form. You can request that we mail, and we can also send it by fax. You can make an appointment at City Hall to come in and sign the form specifically. Those that actually do receive the form by either electronic means or through the mail or fax, you can actually sign it and then drop it off in the mail slot. And that's only if you disagree with council approving the loan bylaw. But more specifically to your question, Councillor Moreau, we have not been made aware that there's currently any thoughts on the provinces to amend the community charter in light of having more electronic means for these types of procedures.
Okay, Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, I'm fully in support of this. I think this runs on the heel. For the last 3 years, we've been chasing a 200 million plus deficit that we've been slowly tackling. One of the most important things is our water, and we've gone through a few crises with our water, and when this system is all finished and done in the next year or two, we'll be looking back and wondering, you know, like, wow, we accomplished something. The garbage dump, the cell, that's something that we've been talking about for 2-3 years, knew it was coming. And, you know, unfortunately, we don't have the money to just plop down a check for $10 million here and $10 million there, but the loan agreement we're entering into isn't going to be an increase in taxes, and that's a plus. So I really think it's a win-win for the city going this route.
Councillor Adie.
Yeah, I, in terms of the two projects, we really don't have a choice anyway. The question before us is really whether this is the way the public wants us to pursue it. And so therefore we're asking for their feedback. So I guess my only question, and you've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think that under the current circumstances, there are people who have found it difficult to access the city for various purposes, and I would not want to think that anything we do around this process becomes viewed by individuals as difficult. It should be a process that's easy for people to participate in. I've always been a big fan of as much participation in these processes as possible. So I trust that staff are putting some energy into trying to make sure it's as glitch-free as possible for the public.
Other comments?
I just add one more thing, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on Councillor Ady's sentiment that we have no choice anyway to make these investments, and I couldn't agree more. But what I do want to add to that is both of these investments, from my perspective, are once in a generation, or at least once every 30, 50, 75-year investments. And so the onus is on us to make sure that we're doing this work correctly, that we're not just building another landfill cell, but we're making the investments that we need to, that this is going to be the last landfill cell that we ever need to build. And by the same token, our first water system lasted us 100 years. We need to be making sure that we're building our next water system to last us another 100 years, because if we don't have a choice anyway, we may as well build it right the first time.
Any other comments? Okay, the motion's on the floor, so all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a report regarding the official community plan update.
Thank you. The iPlan Planning and Development Services has been hired to complete an update of the Prince Rupert Official Community Plan 2007 bylaw. The lead consultant representing iPlan, Rob Buchan, attended in Prince Rupert in 2019 in December for the unveiling of the Prince Rupert 2030 Vision Strategy and has begun updating the current OCP. There was a survey conducted in February and March, which attracted significant participation with overwhelming support for the Vision 2030 strategy. While the initial survey engagement was active and productive, the impact of COVID-19 on the consultation strategy has been significant. With the physical distancing protocols and current prohibition on large in-person gatherings, the ability to conduct traditional town hall meetings and having in-person consultations has been removed from the intended consultation approach. COVID-19 has created a need to move to a more online, physically distanced approach to the next consultation phase, which is supported by recent ministerial order updates. Accordingly, the amended work plan timeline is based on further consultation, which will be principally hosted on the Engage Rupert website. Staff is requesting that Mayor and Council direct iPlan to consult with the North Coast Regional District, the District of Port Edward, the Gitxaala, Metlakatla, and Lakwalams First Nations, School District 52, and the Prince Rupert Port Authority as part of the OCP update.
Thank you. Questions from council? Okay, so no resolution.
I have one question, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
go ahead.
There was a lot of, well, first of all, I'll move the motion if we want to put it on the floor.
I see this as no motion here.
There will be a motion required to direct iPlan, so if Councillor Moreau would like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you can move that. Any seconders? Second by Councillor Morvan. Okay. Continue.
So my question, obviously I'm in support of the motion to do that consultation. I noticed in that survey there was a lot of reference to Vision 2030. One thing I don't want to leave by the wayside, and I just want to confirm, is that iPlan has been using or is building on the interim land use policy framework that we had done a couple of years ago as part of our planning for major projects. There was a ton of great work that I think we had all come to agreement on after hours and hours of workshops, whether that was the urban containment boundary or infill development policies, housing, industrial land development, all those types of things. And I just want to make sure from staff that interim land use policy framework has been included in some of this OCP update.
Yes, I can confirm that it has been. Yeah.
Great. Other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, next we have a report on the 2019 annual report.
I'll speak to this on behalf of the city manager. The annual report is a statutory requirement of the community charter. Council must approve its circulation as well as approve a date for an annual public meeting. This report to council includes those requirements, provides the annual report, and outlines where the annual report will be available for the public to review.
Great. So the resolution would be that council approves the circulation of the 2019 annual report and setting the date of June 22nd, 2020 for the public meeting at the Committee of the Whole meeting will enable the city to meet its annual report legislative obligations. So moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Skelton Morven. Okay, discussion?
Can I assume then that we're seeking to make arrangements for the public to actually be able to be here to be a part of that?
Yes, I can confirm that we are looking at capacity limits and things to do to keep the public safe. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, let's wait to hear from the public, and just want to say another great job on the annual report. It looks amazing. Lots of all the information that the public could ever want on us is in the annual report every year. So we're looking forward to hearing some feedback on that. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, next we have a correspondence for action, a letter from our active office. And so the motion would be to get a letter of support to get a regional business liaison program established here through the Northern Development Institute, or NDIT, sorry. So moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Adie. So this person would come and help us through the helpline. So I think, and there's no cost to the city, so I think this would be a good initiative to support. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, next we have another resolution from our last council meeting. Councillor Niche put a notice of motion to put a recommendation that staff send a letter to the province of British Columbia to request a conservation officer in Prince Rupert. So looking for a motion on that. So moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Adie. Okay, is there any further discussion on that matter?
Since that was brought up, obviously we had the incident in Port Ed, which I think is only going to strengthen the reasoning that we do need to send this letter. I think that I'm not asking for a full-fledged service, but I think that we should be asking for an officer, whether that be an officer part-time during part of the year, or during the times when the wolves seem to be at their busy time. But I do feel that, it is warranted. I mean, this happens every year. I mean, everyone's got their reasoning why they say it's happening. I'm not going to get into that. But it does happen every year. And, whether it's development or it's just they're hungry. I mean, they're looking for something to eat, and they're here, and we need to have somebody local. I find it frustrating that you have to make a phone call and have somebody drive for an hour and a half to by the time they show up, the wolf is gone. And to have someone local at least part of the time would definitely help, and I think it's warranted.
And I know Port Ed is also in support of that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're also facing that may be a little bit new is the impact of some of the development that's happening on Kane Island and the degree to which that squeezes the habitat for the wolves. I think we're seeing some of the impact of that. The other piece of this also, of course, is it's not just wolves. We've had incidents with bears before, and if there's no conservation officer here, it falls to the RCMP. And I can't speak for them, but I'm sure that the officers who end up in those situations find it very challenging. So I think having an officer here would certainly help in terms of that aspect. And finally, just in listening to the community and the debate around wolves and should we do this or should we do that? As I said last time, I'm not going to wade into that, but I think that the benefit of having an officer here is that you've got somebody who's available immediately, but it's not just about dealing with problem animals. It can also be about education. It can be about mitigation. It can be about preventing things from happening that are foreseeable. So I think in any number of very positive ways, a conservation officer would be an asset to the community, and that's why I'm in favor of it.
Other comments? Follow up?
Yeah, just one part that I had brought up last time, that the reason why it was kind of, bother me too is that we have police officers responding to this, and you know, they're not trained for that. They have so many other things to be doing, and to take them away from the community where they're needed to be doing other things, you know, it's frustrating to see that because of the. If you look at our budget every year and see how much money we spend on RCMP, it's a lot of money, and to watch most of our resources for a day, you know, chasing around a wolf with him, you know, they don't have the equipment for that. They're not trained for that. That's not their mandate, and so for them to be doing that, it's just not efficient use of taxpayers' money. And I think that we have to have the properly trained people with the proper equipment to do the job, and leave the RCMP to be doing what they should be doing, and that's dealing with other community issues. So that was kind of one of the main reasons why I brought it up last time.
Councillor Cunningham.
I agree with Councillor Neese that, you know, the RCMP are a municipal local police force hired by us to look after law and order and a lot of other problems. And this is a provincial matter that's been going on for years, and I think the province has neglected it to the point where now it's a serious problem. And whether they live trap and relocate them or cull, I have, you know, that's a debate I don't want to get into. But when a person gets attacked, which is a very rare occasion, when a wolf attacks a human, then something has to be done about it. And I think I agree 100% with Councillor Neese that we should be looking at having at least a CO here, if not all year round, during the times when it's necessary. And it's just an asset that this city needs right now. Like what was mentioned, with all this development going on out on Ridley Highway there, you know, their habitats being shrunk, and there's deer in town, lots of feral cats, and lots of people's pets that are easy picking for these wolves. And next, you know, it could be a small person, and they won't be as lucky as this senior that actually got medevac to Vancouver and is going to recover. A small child and a wolf, it's a foregone conclusion of what's going to happen.
Other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm in favor of this motion, and so our residents are concerned about this and also scared, so they want some officer here. I'm wondering, like, until we send a letter or province make their decision on our request, so either you or our manager can call them and ask them more presence in the meantime here. Is it possible?
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of this motion.
Other comments?
Yeah, I think it's definitely warranted for a full-time officer to be here as well, and I actually concur and agree with Councillor Adey with it, not only to be a reactive service, but a proactive service as well, providing education in the areas of conservation and wildlife and things like that, and wildlife safety. There's a lot of opportunity for that, and also creating a local job in the process. So I'm definitely in favor of this motion.
Okay, any other further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, any inquiries from members of council? Councillor Adey.
Yeah, just along the lines of what I was saying in regard to the alternative approval process and accessibility for the public. The homeowners grant deadline is on the way, and I know that in any normal year, that last week of June and the first couple of days of July are very busy days down here, and I'm just wondering where we're at in terms of preparing for handling that in a different way this year, so that it's not a process that people find daunting.
On our website, we've actually provided information to people on how to use or apply for their homeowner grant using what's called EHOG. And there's actually snapshot instructions, so in pictorial form, to make it a little bit easier. People can also sign the form and drop it off in the mail slot. They don't actually have to come into City Hall. It needs to be applied for by July 2nd, however, so anyone who's listening, please make sure that you do apply for it. Because if you don't on time, then if there is any unpaid amounts, or you will receive a 10% penalty, unfortunately, on the amount that you don't claim. So, but you can do it online. It's not very hard at all. If you need assistance, you can definitely call City Hall. We will help you and walk you through it. And alternatively, as mentioned, you can sign the bottom of your form, your tax notice, and drop it off in the mail slot. Even if you're not coming in to make a tax payment, please make sure that you claim your homeowner grant.
Just to follow up, I did try, and one of the reasons I asked is I tried to do mine online, and it didn't work out. It didn't take the, I think it was the PIN number or whatever that. So I haven't gone back to try again. So I'm not sure whether that's a unique experience. I have learned a little bit about finding my way around a computer, although I did just discover that these things take photographs. And I've really enjoyed that aspect of it in the last couple of days. So I'm just wondering, has anybody else communicated that they've had trouble with the online part?
Not to me specifically, but I'm sure that you're not alone.
On that note, representing some seniors in town, there are seniors that don't have computers, don't have, heaven forbid, iPhones or that, and they come down here diligently with their check, and, you know, I'm quite sure they're going to be coming down and hopefully just putting it in the mail slot. But that's just one aspect of the pandemic or COVID-19 that we got to deal with. But I really think we've got to be open about how we receive taxes and things like this, because some people can come down here and bounce off it and lose the homeowner grant and things like this. And so, and you know, I got to hand it to our staff. They've done a great job so far, and it might be an added burden to them. But you know, again, there are going to be people that are going to have a problem with what's happening. And how we address it is just through communication, whether it's in the local paper or whatever. But you know, everyone gets that paper, and some people do read it, and thoroughly from page to page, and they examine every part of it. So I really think it might be worth our while to put an ad in the paper explaining exactly some of the alternative ways, because some people just won't get it.
Okay.
Perhaps it's a good time for me to add that when anyone received their property tax notice, there is also a second paper in that envelope, which is our tax insert. We made sure this year to address many of the issues that would be coming up, specifically paying online through your banking institution, which we would like to remind everybody that if you do so, please make sure that you make the payment 4 days in advance of the due date to ensure that your banking institution has enough time for it to go in the ether and then make its way into our financial institution, so it is recorded as you having paid it on time. But that's just one particular item. All the other items on how to pay, when to pay, options to pay are all located on that tax insert. Given the fact that COVID has been such a disruptive event for everybody, we have tried to do everything we possibly can to make it as clear as possible. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call. Staff is available. If you come down to City Hall, you haven't made an appointment, but we have space, we will let you in. We are trying everything we can do to be accommodating.
Okay, any other reports? Oh, okay.
I'd like to read a letter I just received recently. It's from a resident. It's, "Dear Councillor Cunningham, I was wondering why nothing is being done to fix this town up. I just moved here in December and I'm shocked at the amount of abandoned, derelict, burnt-out buildings, not to mention all the could-be beautiful heritage homes that have been allowed to fall in disrepair by owners who obviously don't care. Well, I do care, and I want to know what the city's plan is for action. Why are the residents who allow garbage to pile up in their yards and their homes to fall apart not being fined? I know we have a bylaw officer, blah, 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 but why doesn't the city offer some sort of incentive program for home renovation? At the very least, team up with a local paint store to offer exterior paint to homeowners for free or at an extremely discounted rate. Most of the homes here could look amazing with just a quick coat of paint. It would dramatically change the look of this town. I also think the businesses along 2nd, 3rd Avenue should be painted fun, bright colors, personal opinion, like a West Coast town should. Even the empty ones. Driving down our main drag should be a much nicer experience for tourists, but more importantly, locals who have to look at the depressing, ugly buildings. If you start up a community rejuvenation paint party, it would be done in a few weeks. I, for one, would be at the top of the volunteer list. Please take some of these into consideration. This town has amazing potential, and the locals deserve better. Cow Bay looks great, but wouldn't it be nice to feature the rest of the town in your advertisements too, instead of being too embarrassed to post those pictures online? And that's not the only letter or email I've got on this topic. I constantly get stopped by people about it. And we've talked about it and talked about it. Pandemic came along, put it in the back burner to a certain degree. But, you know, we're talking about 2030 and rejuvenation downtown and that, and then some of the buildings just need to be steam cleaned to look better than they are. And I think it's the city's responsibility to let the owners know. I know some have been sent letters, but we can send letters to a lot of different people and tell them, look, if you don't do it, the city's going to be hiring a contractor to do it. Because you drive up 3rd Avenue right now and there's people that just don't give a damn about what their building looks like. And the first one is just next to the credit union. And I really think these owners should be held accountable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, graduation ceremony is happening this week now, started today, will go for next few days. So I would like to congratulate all the students, their parents, teachers, sports staff for another successful year and wish them all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Morvan, second by Councilor Cunningham. All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned.